Many people have said that it's a good thing that I became a priest. And I think what they were really saying was, it's a good thing that I didn't become a parent. And I can understand their thinking. Even today, the gospel, I could have been just a very, very awful parent, because if I and my wife had, let's say, twins, fraternal twins, a boy and a girl, I know what I would have named them. And I would have been proud of myself for being so scriptural. Because it says Thomas, who was called Didymus. Didymus is another word for twin. So I would have named my twins, the girl Dee Dee and the boy Moose. It's a good thing I didn't become a parent. So Jesus gives to them the healing gift of the Spirit. This Sunday has come to be referred to as Divine Mercy Sunday. And it's not just that we are receivers of the divine mercy. In the gospel, when Jesus gives his Spirit, it's a commissioning that we are to become sharers of that divine mercy. Like so much of our Christian call, it's not just worrying about what we get, but it is our call to carry on what Christ gives. And I don't know if we are really capable of giving divine mercy. We can be merciful. We can be forgiving. But let's admit it. Let's be honest with ourselves. Very often, when someone has hurt or injured me, and I forgive them, I show them mercy. Don't we get a little puffed up inside? Ha ha, I am doing you this favor because I am such a good person. That's why I don't know if we can give divine mercy, the mercy that God gives, because God does not have an ego. We do. When God forgives us, it is strictly out of total love. And God gives us his gift of healing. There's no sense of what he gets out of it. We still have a ways to go. What will help us to be maybe better sharers of God's divine mercy? It's a challenge. As I say, that ego, that self, can so easily get in the way when we do it. Patting ourselves on the back, expecting that if I forgive them, they darn well better be grateful enough, and if they're not, well, it's one more thing they have to ask me forgiveness for then. What can help us to be merciful and forgiving the way that God is? I think we saw a hint of it in the first reading. The early believers, their genuine concern was for one another, not for themselves. They held everything in common. Dirty socialist, no. The care was for one another. There wasn't an element of ego in that. Maybe that's what it takes for us. The more we are able to put concern for our neighbor out in front, maybe the more we can be sharers of divine mercy. This is an old story. Fiorello LaGuardia was mayor of New York City during the worst years of the Great Depression and during all of World War II. Devoted New Yorkers called him the Little Flower because he was only 5'4" and always wore a carnation in his lapel. He was a very colorful personality who used to hitch rides on the New York City fire trucks, raid illegal bars with the police department, and take entire orphanages to baseball games. Since he lived long before television, whenever the New York newspapers went on strike, he used to go on radio and read the Sunday comics to the kids. One very cold night in January of 1935, the mayor turned up at a night court in the poorest part of the city. LaGuardia told the judge to take the night off, and as was his right in his position as mayor, he himself acted as judge that night. Within a few minutes, a tattered old woman was brought before him, charged with stealing a loaf of bread. She told LaGuardia that her daughter's husband had deserted her, her daughter was sick, and her grandchildren were starving. But the shopkeeper from whom the bread was stolen refused to drop the charges. "It's a bad neighborhood, Your Honor," the man told the mayor. "She's got to be punished to teach other people around here a lesson." LaGuardia sighed. He turned to the woman and said, "I've got to punish you. The law makes no exceptions. $10 or 10 days. But even as he pronounced sentence, the mayor was already reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a $10 bill announcing, "Here, your fine is paid. And furthermore, I'm going to fine everyone in this courtroom 50 cents for living in a city where a person has to steal bread so that her grandchildren can eat. Mr. Bailiff, collect the fines and give them to the defendant." So the following day, the New York City newspapers reported that $47.50 was turned over to a bewildered old woman who had stolen a loaf of bread to feed her starving grandchildren. 50 cents of that amount having been contributed by the red-faced grocery store owner. While some 70 petty criminals, people with traffic violations, and New York City policemen, each of which had just paid 50 cents for the privilege of doing so, gave the mayor a standing ovation. Living in a city a country where a person has to steal bread so that her grandchildren can eat. And yet the early church they held all things in common. They cared for one another. We have a ways to go before we can really be dispensers of divine mercy. Well, how do we get closer? I mean, that's a big picture. It's a big goal. What can I do? Well, do what Jesus told us to do. Many of you may have heard this before. This particular version is attributed to St. Teresa of Calcutta. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never just between you and them anyway. Receive the Holy Spirit. Share the Holy Spirit. Be dispensers of divine mercy. It's not easy. But if it was good enough for Christ, and it was, we need to keep trying.